Well, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Kyoko Mosa. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from Boston. This is the competitive session, and I'm going to cover this along with John. He's going to introduce himself in a second. My role at IBM is I'm a web experience evangelist, or as my wife likes to call me, a professional storyteller. And we're going to go over some of the big players in the web experience marketplace today. So with that, John?
Thanks, Kyoko. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Roslowski. I am the portal sales leader for the West and for Canada. Been in this role for about the past 5, 6, 7-ish years. And one of the things that I love about my job is like Kyoko, right? Except I have a similar role, and I think the way my wife puts it is you're a hired mouthpiece. So what I'm going to try to do, because I've kept a pretty close eye on the competition. What are they good at? Where are they not so good at? Where do we fit? Where do we not fit? So let me provide a little bit of context before we get into all the great details. Right. Again, some of the things we're going to cover, a little bit of the basics, the competitive landscape, and then drill down on some of these specific competitors. I'll make the assumption that most everybody in the room is in IT, okay? And one of your customers, your primary customers, is the line of business, right? But when you look at the line of business, right, these are folks that aren't technical. Right? They're used to using tools. They're used to looking at solutions. They don't care about frameworks and all the capabilities on the back end. All they care about is, how do I get my job done? What do I do? And when you ask them, what is Portal? Right? One of the first questions, or one of the first answers they'll get is something like this. Right? It's my Google, it's my Yahoo. It's a place where I can aggregate pieces of information that's relevant to me. All right? And that's exactly what a portal is, except we took it one level further, right? Where the key component inside a portal are the applications. That was our core competency. And one of the little kicks that I've been on for the past 4 or 5 years is to try to figure out, at least from my competitor's perspective, what are the core competencies, right? From an IBM perspective, what are the core competencies? How do these pieces all fit together? And at least from an IBM WebSphere portal perspective, our competency is the ability to integrate and aggregate applications. Why? Because that's what drives businesses. We got started, and before I go down the we got started path, when you start asking yourself questions as IT professionals, what are some of the capabilities that I expect from this portal framework? Right? First of all, I'm going to be straight up front. It's not a finished out-of-the-box end-user product. It requires a little bit of work. It requires a little bit of development. It requires a little bit of governance. And those are the things you need to take into account. This slide is a few years old, but yet the content on here, or the words that you see on there, are also extremely important, because these are the things that IT is looking for out of a portal solution. Okay? It isn't just a simple tactical little piece. It's something that involves a more strategic view, something that encompasses not just one individual department within your organization, but it spans across the board. So things like consolidation, self-service, right? A cost avoidance piece by providing the ability to reuse. Something as simple as multi-channel. I mean, what, 3, 4 years ago, all we were worried about are 4 or 5 different browsers. Now, all of a sudden, we're worrying about 4 or 5 different browsers, plus tablets, plus, the iOS devices, the Android devices, the BlackBerry devices, and pretty soon we're going to have web TV. So, all of these things now you have to take into account, and especially when building, excuse me, that user experience. A couple of the other components: roles-based security, single sign-on. It's amazing how many customers I still interact with where they're still trying to solve that whole concept of a single sign-on, right? Everybody still has multiple passwords. I mean, IBM, I hate to admit it, we still have multiple sign-ons. The good news is we're challenged from the perspective of, okay, you need to re-enter your username and password to get into this site. The good news is it's one username and one password. We may get asked 3 times sometimes, but that's because of security. Again, that's because of security requirements and governance requirements. And then the other big one is branding. This is fundamentally why Portal, God, I messed up the order of my slides here. This is why we fundamentally created this concept of Portal, was to separate the display layer from the application layer. How did this all, how did all this go about? And let me skip forward 2 slides. It all started back in the 2000s, right? The financial institutions in New York all of a sudden started doing a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Each of these companies brought different back-end systems, back-office systems to this new conglomerate. And now all of a sudden, how do you manage all these? How do you interact with all these applications? Right? Some of the technically astute people quickly learned how to use cut and paste to integrate information between some of these different user interfaces. Okay? So there had to have been a better way. There was a way. You can integrate the back ends, but that could be costly, 18 months, 24-month projects. So an easier way was, let's do it at the front end. Let's do it at the glass. Let's do it at the display layer. That's how Portal came to be. And again, the first set of requirements were, give me the ability to integrate and aggregate applications. We then started adding some capabilities to it, right? The whole concept of single sign-on, the concept of web content management, right? Not just something that's a structured component, but let me add some unstructuredness to it. Let me add the human touch, put a little more color on the page, right? Granted, we had to deal with all the refresh rates, and every page having to, almost like a 3270 with the green screen. Every time you hit a button, everything refreshes. We've gotten past some of that, but we've also added some additional capabilities. Virtual portals, mashups, right, some mobile capabilities. Ultimately, what we're dealing with today is, how do I blend some of the social aspects and social service into my portals? And then one final thing to keep in mind is, who is your audience? Who are the viewers? I don't like calling them users, right, because that it doesn't completely describe my audience. Who are the viewers of your portal experience? What are they looking for? Because if I have a portal infrastructure, a portal framework that allows me to tailor the experience both for an internal audience and an external audience, and be able to address the needs of either an individual or a group, I now have an absolutely phenomenal framework. And these are questions as you sit down, and again, I hope you're all Portal customers, or I hope you're going to be Portal customers, but if you happen to sit down and have to do a comparison between, say, LifeRay or Oracle and us, these are some of the questions you need to consider asking. How easy is it to address all these different viewerships? And what specifically do these viewers need? All right. So this is Gartner's report from this past fall. Interestingly enough, they added a few more dots on that page. All right. IBM is still doing well. We've been in that leaders quadrant for the past 9 straight years. Okay. Microsoft finally inched us out, or if that is an inch, right, inched us out about 2 years ago. And a lot of it had to do with how many customers do they claim that they have that use SharePoint. Not a specific version of SharePoint, but just its general term called SharePoint. And we'll pick on them in a little bit. But from an IBM perspective, we've been in this leaders quadrant for quite some time. Why? Because we've provided some very solid capabilities. I actually pulled out 2 sections, and I'm going to pick on our technology before we pick on everybody else's technology. Gartner said some very positive things about us. We've got a robust infrastructure. We've been around for a while. It can cover all aspects of the business, right? It's an industrial strength product, and it's mature. It has a lot of added value capabilities, and because it lives inside of the IBM software group, we have access to a lot of other service like commerce, like analytics, like process, that a lot of other companies would need to basically address as, oh, you need to go to a third party. Right? And they say some nice things. Gartner, specifically Gene Pfeiffer, which, by the way, he stole some of my thunder in that opening session, had some pretty nice things to say. Again, good high-volume websites, right? Very Java-based in nature, has a pretty wide scope of what it's capable of doing. Right? We've been working on the emerging or improving the user experience a lot more. And then the concept of, we're industry leaders and we've got a big business partner community that can help customers through this process. But Gartner also does something else. They say 3 good things about every one of the competitors, and they also kind of ding us. All right? Now, am I going to get a little defensive here? Yes, I am. But I'm going to explain why in a minute. All right? One of the first things that Gartner mentioned is we're too complex. Our customers perceive us as too complex. And I'll be honest with you, being in the IT industry for, 30 years now or so, of course this stuff is complex. All right? We wouldn't have jobs or careers if this stuff wasn't complex. But our job is to take the complex and figure out what pieces work for us and what pieces work for our customers. And who are our customers? It could be the line of business. It could be people that are actually transacting, that are doing commerce on our websites. So from the complexity perspective, in order for me to have a full functioning technology and framework, I have to be a little complex. What does that mean? As IT professionals, we need to invest a little bit more time in the planning and the governance phase. And this is where we sometimes skimp, right? This is where people sometimes try to go through shortcuts. If you don't have those capabilities, by all means, please work with one of our business partners, which actually leads us to the second one, right? High-level skills, sophisticated IT skills, right? Again, this is a very challenging time in the industry. Everything is changing at internet speeds. And before, when my end users weren't technically savvy, I, as an IT guy, could get away with a lot of stuff, okay? But now, because everybody that walks into my company, either as an employee or a customer, they already have at least some basic computer skills. They know how to navigate a browser, they know how to use a search engine, and everybody's on, how does my wife call it, the Facebook, okay? So you have to take some of those things into account. Their expectations are significantly higher, all right? And in order to be able to keep up with that, we as IT professionals now have to start looking at what things can we do to make my customers a little bit, make their experience a little bit easier. So things like self-service, things like analytics, things like web content, let them control some of the things. And we addressed some of those. I'll get to your question in a second. And we addressed some of those in our previous versions, version 6, version 7, and now more so in version 8. And we have a lot of customers that have taken advantage of these capabilities and then extended it through some of these services down here like analytics, social, mobile, and context. All right? Again, have nothing better to do? Go out to Google. Do a quick search on all-in URL, one word, WPS/portal. You'll see about anywhere from 16 million to about 32 million pages pop up. These are customers that are using WebSphere Portal externally. So if you're getting ready to build a website or redesign a website, you want great examples? There you go. Right? Take a look at some of these. And again, put your consultant's hat on for a second and ask the question, who's the viewership? Who are they trying to target? Where are they going with this? All right, and in version, well, let me pause there for a second. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, on the previous chart, where are we getting dinged on the overall usability? Because I've got, off the top of my head, I can think of one customer that's a one-man shop.
Mm-hmm.
Is it when they're looking at the wider range of things you can do with Portal versus smaller shops where they've just got one person?
So the question was, all right, I've got a customer that's a one-man operation, and their stuff works brilliantly. A lot of this, right, is a matter of scope. What else is involved? How many applications? The complexity of the applications. Is it, just web content, or is it enterprise content management? Right? You've got all of these moving parts and pieces, and the level of complexity grows as you start introducing some additional services. So process, commerce, some of the analytics stuff, some of the predictive analytics. All of a sudden, there's not just one moving part and piece, there's dozens of them. At least from a portal perspective, I can bring all those together at the display layer. But from an IT perspective, these are all services that I still have to manage on the back end. So, one of the ways we address this level of complexity, or how do we get some of these new capabilities out to market between major releases? If you haven't had a chance, check out our Fast Track website. This is where a lot of the new innovations over the past 6 to 12 months, we showcase them here. You can download, the web application bridge, the content template catalog. You've got all sorts of additional improvements to Portal that are above and beyond, at that time, version 7, which was the release. Now with version 8, we've incorporated some of those into version 8, and we're still going to continue down the path of, we've got this new innovation, here's an easy way to deploy it. And again, you as the IT professional can then decide, do I need to download it and install it and use it? Yes or no, right, based on some of the business needs, right? And in version 8, we take it to the next level. I didn't get a chance to talk with Gene Pfeiffer. Actually, I met him the other night, actually shook his hand, telling me he did a great job, and actually, Gartner's going to be sending out the questionnaire for this year's Gartner Magic Quadrant. So it'll be real interesting to see the comparison with what comments they're going to say now that version 8 is released and we started addressing some of those things. So, nice little intro, 15 minutes. I did a lot better than I expected. So let me turn it over to Keiko and have him take you through some of the individual competitors.
All right, so show of hands, how many people have heard of this company or use them? Use them? Okay, this is going to be completely unbiased, so let's go on for a few slides. Adobe's strategy is really focusing on content, specifically creative content. They love flashy, they love shiny things, they love to have a good presentation, and this is primarily where they focus their sales and operations for their business, is on people who create creative content. So things like using Dreamweaver or using some of the Flash tools. So they're very much focused on being able to tell visual stories. Their focus from a company-wide strategy is on managing that creative content and doing some analytics and optimization of that data. So they acquired Day Software, which is now packaged as their web content management piece. They acquired Omniture, which is their analytics engine. And they're packaging everything together for their web experience strategy. They focus, again, on marketing primarily. So if you have a website that you want to do some kind of campaign management or a microsite to do some promotions, this is primarily where they'd focus. They actually made a couple of acquisitions, like I said. So CQ5 is kind of the center of the universe. This is where the web content management takes place. They have some additional products. One is called Adobe Social, which they use to do some kind of analysis of what's going on in the social media sites. They have some Scene 7, which is kind of like a promotion, a way to take rich media and make it available for the web. They also made some acquisitions for PhoneGap, so again, they're focusing on the mobile market. So again, very specific type of content that they create. Where they do lack kind of the overall vision of a big vendor is they are not a portal. So let me repeat that. Adobe does not create a portal. They have a very good web content management tool, but they do not have a portal. They can claim to integrate with portals. They do integrate with IBM Portal, but the tool is not a portal. They're also not an e-commerce site, so you actually have to go to a third party if you're doing any kind of e-commerce strategy, and the ECM integration as well requires some third-party capabilities. So where Adobe is likely to play, on the left-hand side we have some use cases. So again, telling visual stories, marketing. They leverage a lot of the forms that they use to get into accounts. And they focus a lot on retail. They specifically said their target type of website is external, B2C. So they're not going to do anything with internal sites, or that's not their sweet spot. They do also have a campaign management tool that integrates very well, so they are going to do things around campaigns. And the industries we typically find them in are listed on the right-hand side. So very strong in media houses, very strong in technology houses. They do have a big footprint in the government because of, again, electronic forms and obviously retail. So where does IBM have its advantages over Adobe? Again, Adobe is not a portal, so they don't integrate very well with other applications. So they're not a social company. They do monitor social, but they do not have a social engine behind it similar to our connections. For enterprise websites, so if you did want a single vendor that allows you to go across the organization, having a B2B site, a B2C site, and a B2E site, they don't play in that space. E-commerce, again, they require integration with some third parties. Analytics, they did acquire Omniture. They haven't integrated this capability very well yet into their suite of products. So this is one of the things that, you know, their roadmap isn't very clear about their direction. They're not good at selling to IT because the first thing IT asks them is, well, once you pull away all the bells and whistles, what is my job requirement to get this working with other pieces? And there's a lot of coding and maintenance that you have to do. And they don't have a middleware stack similar to IBM's. The second vendor is Liferay. How many people have heard or used Liferay?
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, let's pause for a second.
So, from an Adobe perspective, remember what I challenged you with, core competencies. What are these guys really good at, right? They started out building tools for developers, Dreamweaver, Flash, really cool stuff, absolutely phenomenal at what they did. Bar none, one of the best companies when it comes from a tools perspective. Start talking to developers, they love using their technology, right? They all of a sudden started changing gears and started pointing at the non-developer environment. However, some of those developer requirements still had to come with it. When they acquired when they acquired Day Software and then they acquired Omniture, right? They're trying to put together this experience. And I'll tell you right now, I was dealing with 2 customers where Adobe came in, went directly, avoided IT, went directly to the marketing folks and said, we got a great solution for you. The stuff demoed really well. It was just gorgeous, brilliant. But now when the IT folks got notified, I'm like, okay, now what do we do? Right? Because to solve a web content problem is a very tactical solution. Does it need solving? Probably. And the marketing people would probably be the obvious people that need help there. But it then begs the next logical question. What's the very next thing you're going to need to do once you solve that web content problem? Typically, it's how do I bring applications in? How do I provide self-service? What kind of framework do I have? Or is this going to be a standalone application? Right? So those are some of the questions you have to ask. Right? If your marketing folks have a specific campaign management web content challenge, this is actually a very reasonable solution. But now all of a sudden when they ask you, so how do I add that SAP application into it? Right? How do I extend some of the capabilities? Adobe's answer, oh, you can do it through widgets, don't worry about it. Okay, that answer may work for marketing, but that answer doesn't work for IT. So keep some of those things in mind. Liferay.
So Liferay, show of hands, how many have Liferay, heard of Liferay? Wow. IBM is, you don't count. Heard of it. So Liferay is a company based in California. It actually is a company. It's about 200 employees, and it started off as the brainchild of one individual who was working with a couple of nonprofit organizations who wanted a portal but couldn't afford, the big vendors. So he developed over the weekend a portal that he could use for his nonprofit organizations, and it kind of grew from there. So now it's an open source platform. They deal a lot with community, Java community developers to contribute code to their product. And essentially, they have a tool that is now gaining popularity in the marketplace because it is free to download and free to install, at least the community edition. Where Lifeway makes its money is on providing support services, and they do have some consulting that they do. And typically, their websites are some customer-facing, but a lot more for smaller internal type departments. So the analogy of Lifeway is, I don't know if any of you traveled here on one of those budget airlines, but how many of you have taken a budget airline in the past? So I took my family with me on a vacation to Jamaica, and we took one of these budget airlines. Very cheap tickets, family of 4 probably cost me $600 for just the tickets. But once you come into the airport and try to check in, there's a fee to check in. If you have a bag, you have to pay for each bag. Once you get on the plane, if your bag doesn't fit underneath the chair, you have to pay for the overhead luggage compartment. You have to pay for food once you're on the plane. God forbid the plane goes down in an accident, you pay for the oxygen masks. So, you know, at the end of the trip, I ended up paying more than double the price of what the original ticket was just for all of these fees. And that's kind of what Lifeway is like. It's a very easy way to get into an organization because it's free to download, free to get started. But once you start to develop, once you start to really try to deploy a website on Lifeway, there's a lot of consulting fees that go into it, and the total cost of ownership, if you're looking over probably a 3-year period, typically turns out to be more than even some of the big vendors, including IBM. So Lifeway plays, again, in smaller websites. A lot of technical people love it because they can just download and start testing their applications or start testing their portlets without paying anything. A lot of students learn development skills on Lifeway because it's free to use. The sites they typically go after are, again, B2E sites, B2B sites, and microsites. And we'll typically find them in nonprofit, education, government, and so forth. So where does IBM have an advantage over Lifeway? Web content management. So Lifeway provides a simple rich text editor to enter content, but that's about it. They don't have any really sophisticated way of managing web content. Their interpretation of social is having a blog or a wiki widget which you can drop on a page, which in my opinion is not the best way of doing social. Social is not just liking a page or retweeting a page. It's being able to see contextual information, contextual social information, depending on what page you're looking at. When you talk about enterprise, this is where it really gets expensive. Because you have to bring your own application server, you have to bring your own database, you have to bring your own LDAP. So they don't have anything other than the portal stack, the portal itself, which you have to bring your own application server to develop. They're not very good at analytics, and they don't measure a lot of things. They have hooks into Google Analytics, but it's very rudimentary. They're not a big enough company to have specific industry solutions. So if you're looking for something that fits your industry, you're probably not going to get it there. And they really don't have any reporting or monitoring tools. So again, this is a small company. The documentation is horrible. A lot of reason why they're getting popular, again, is because this is a developer's tool. And a lot of developers love to tinker with this on the weekend and like to get paid, or like the glorification of having your code accepted as part of the trunk of LifeRay. Yes, question here.
What about support? How do they compare on support if you need to get a phone and call somebody?
Yeah, you send an email. So the question is, what about support? Their support organization has been notoriously bad. They don't have on-site support. They don't have, I do think they have a phone line, but typically they suggest you go look in the forums, the online forums for help first before sending an email to get the support, unless you're paying the big fees for their support.
I didn't think they had the option.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a couple closing remarks on LifeRay. They've actually been around for about 8 years, right? This is actually this as a for lack of a better term, a little product is actually a very elegant one. I've had a couple of cases where I've been involved with customers that were comparing WebSphere Portal to LifeRay, and I lost. I lost to LifeRay. But why did I lose to LifeRay? Because they had an IT organization that was extremely sophisticated and basically needed a new challenge. Okay, they wanted to tinker, right? And in two specific cases, you know, I basically said, you know, guys, just as long as you know what you're getting into, right? This is going to require a lot of care and feeding. They're like, we're willing to sign up for it, not a problem. But here's another thing to keep in mind. This is an open source project. Last time I checked, there's between 20 and 25 different open source portal projects out there. All right. When it comes to an open source community, you do rely on the community. But again, if you rely on the community, you know, those affiliations can change. So now you have to somewhat keep that in mind. LifeRay had a corporate sponsor not too long ago. It was Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems took LifeRay, wrapped some additional services around it, and basically called it their Glassfish Initiative. Actually a brilliant concept. I'm not sure how profitable it was for Sun. But anything that Sun, the consultants, as part of those projects would produce, they contributed to the LifeRay bucket. So now a lot of the enhancements you've seen over the past 4 years were specifically based on that relationship. Well, what happened to Sun? We got acquired by Oracle. Oracle at that time had 4 portals. Add 2 new portals from Sun, and well, I'll beat up on them in a little bit. You know, the open source one, thanks for playing. All right. So now all of a sudden LifeRay lost that corporate sponsor. So they're back to the way they were before this. So now it begs the question, am I willing to take a risk in this? And again, a couple of the customers that I work with said, yeah, I'm willing to take a risk because this is a one-point project, right? This will work for us. So again, take some of those things into account if you are going to go down the LifeRay path. The other thing to also take into account is how many business partners have got good skills within the context of that product. So that's another question worth asking. Okay, cool.
SharePoint. How many people have SharePoint? Heath, have SharePoint? So SharePoint is, as John had mentioned at the beginning of the session, one of these, Microsoft is one of these vendors where they count SharePoint licenses as number of licenses sold, not number of deployments. So that's why they're kind of in the upper right-hand corner of the chart. Their sweet spot historically has been on document collaboration, and how do we have document-centric websites that we probably create and share information on. And that's really what SharePoint is about. They've added some element of communities to it. Their web content management piece is okay, but it's not very sophisticated. They do have a more robust analytic engine for managing the type of documents that are sitting on the website. But again, their focus is really on document-centric type of websites. So if you're heavy content sites, it's easy to get started with Microsoft because a lot of people publish directly from the desktop, so they have good integration with Office and publishing directly to the websites. these are the scenarios where Microsoft is likely to play. So collaboration, internal collaboration, very good at setting up team rooms very quickly, doing some document sharing, doing some project management. So websites with, probably a very fixed timeline that once you're done with it are probably going to get expired. Very good at setting up very quickly microsites. You don't have to really involve IT to set up a SharePoint site. Anybody can just click a few clicks in the wizard and have a SharePoint site up and running pretty fast. They're, again, just to not overwhelm the chart, but they're involved in a lot of big industries that have enterprise license agreements with Microsoft. So they already have paid for the tool. Why not use it is the argument we hear a lot. But they're not very good at publicly facing websites. So your .com websites, not a lot of them run on SharePoint. So you're going to find these, again, mostly for internal sites, not for publicly facing websites. The web content management piece is very rudimentary. They don't have a concept of personalization. It's very much binary. Either you can see something or you cannot see it. You cannot profile information based on who I am as an individual, what geographic location I'm logging in from, and so forth, which is what personalization is. They're very binary. Either you can see it or you cannot see it. So that adds a level of simplicity to their product. They don't do social. Let's be honest here. They are not a very good social. They just don't do social intranets. You won't find a single infrastructure of SharePoint supporting the entire enterprise. You're going to find SharePoint kind of like you find weeds in your backyard. They're going to be here and there all over the place. And as IT people managing an infrastructure of SharePoint, it can be very frustrating because there's no way of applying uniform control over SharePoint. They're not very good at analytics, and they don't really have industry solutions. John?
So this is where we get to play good cop, bad cop. Rewind the clock for a second, right? And think about this. How do we get to this Microsoft SharePoint space, right? All of this started initially with Office, right? Everybody was handed a copy of Office. What is Office good for? You generate documents, you generate reports, you generate spreadsheets, or presentations. Once you created that, what did you do with it? Oh, you put it on the C drive. Cool, right? Worst place on the planet, right? Or on the floppy disks, if you remember those, right? Great. So now we put it on one of the shared drives on the server, right? When Microsoft came out with Exchange, they introduced this wonderful concept called public folders. How well did that go for them? Right? So over time, think about this, over time, last decade plus, we've had all of these different business users creating all these documents, all these objects, without any really good place to put them. Yes, there was FileNet, right, Documentum, a lot of other, major storage devices, but a lot of these customers were looking for something very simple. And what do I mean by customers? I mean some of the lines of business. Hence, SharePoint comes out. And this becomes that perfect spot where I can take my stuff, put it in a space, and show it off, right? So I put out a really cool presentation. Let me put it on my own private website and let everybody else look at it. And if you think about it, how did SharePoint grow up? It's with all these different individual departments and lines of business. Hey, we need a little sharing, a little community. Boom, bring out SharePoint, WSS, it was free, it didn't cost us anything. And these things, like Keiko mentioned, started sprouting up like weeds. And then all of a sudden, IT got wind of it. And the very next question that was asked is, can we take all of these weeds and tie them together? No, okay? Unless you started your SharePoint deployment at the IT level to span across the entire infrastructure, being able to tie all the individual ones together is a major challenge. Now, I got to give SharePoint credit. It's actually a very elegant collaboration tool. They really did a good job on it. With the ribbon interface, the interconnection with all of the Microsoft desktop pieces, what a brilliant lock-in strategy. Because now you're dependent on each of those technologies. You have to have the latest, greatest version of the operating system. You have to have the latest, greatest version of the database, as well as all the individual tools if you want to take advantage of all the features. You can't pick and choose here, all right? But then it created a set of issues for Microsoft, because now instead of being enterprise-centric and being able to take content and personalize it, they were very page and very individual document focused. One of the biggest challenges right now my Microsoft SharePoint customers have is application integration. Right? They will spend a lot of time. As a matter of fact, Microsoft is very proud of the fact that for every dollar that they make on SharePoint, right, business partners make $8 on services. Cool. Sign me up. That's why there's a lot of SharePoint consultants out there. Right? But then it begs the question, I as a customer, right, how many of those $8 pops am I going to have to spend? Right? Because the technology was never designed to be able to extend it and to be leveraged. Now, Microsoft tried from 2007 to 2010. They tried to improve the application capabilities. It didn't work too well. And then start asking them about, okay, now mix, you know, what's the balance between the Java world and the .NET world? You can obviously know which way they tend to lean. Why? Because it's their bread and butter. So, again, those are some of the things you take into account. The biggest problem we have as IT professionals is that the lines of business have already made some of those decisions for us. And we, unfortunately, are stuck with it. So now it begs the question, do we rip and replace? From an IBM perspective, no. Why? Because I can take advantage of SharePoint. I can use it as simply just another container service. I can take content from inside of it and expose it. I can now easily blend stuff that comes from SharePoint and stuff that comes from SAP or Oracle applications on the same screen. That's our added value there. And finally,
Oracle. Anybody using Oracle Web Center? Okay. So Oracle, their product for web experience is called Oracle Web Center. If you have done any analysis of Oracle's spending habits, if you look at the past 18 months or so, they've spent over $3.5 billion, not counting the acquisition of FatWire. They spent $3.5 billion acquiring companies to kind of fill out their portfolio. So they made some acquisitions for ATG, for instance, for their commerce piece. They made the acquisition of FatWire for the web content management. Right now is their CRM system. So they're very, very focused on creating the same type of company that IBM is, but they do it through acquisitions rather than organically developing this in-house. So what exactly does this mean for customers? Well, like John had mentioned, choose your portal. You want to buy something from Oracle, they say, well, we support this. What they don't tell you, and they're very sneaky about this, is they say, well, maybe the feature that you want is supported in one of their 11 portals, which don't all work together, it's not all integrated. But they say, hey, we support it because why? We own it. And this is what you get. So they're very sneaky in terms of their marketing. They'll make a presentation or they'll do a demo that looks smooth, but when you actually pull away the layers and try to figure out what exactly is it that I'm going to buy, it could be any one of these portals that they have available. Where's Oracle likely to play? Let's be clear here. Oracle does not make money selling Web Center. They make money selling Oracle applications or Oracle database. That's their bread and butter. A lot of times, you'll find Web Center included as part of an enterprise license agreement, so it's just bundled in for free or for a low cost. But really where Oracle makes its money is in the application space, and they want to sell you more applications. That's their primary motivation there. So The use cases they go after is if you want to take your Siebel application and integrate that into your website or your portal, you can do that with them. They're very capable of managing huge transactions because of their database. And we find them mostly in intranets, but also with the acquisition of ATG, they're moving into commerce. The acquisition of FatWire, they're moving into more B2C type of websites. When you talk to Oracle and ask them, or show me some references, typically their references are 2 or 3 years old, and they'll use historical FatWire references, or they use historical ATG references. But it's very hard to find a Web Center reference. Somebody's actually deployed Web Center and is successful at doing that. They obviously work in the same industries as we do, but again, they go after the big accounts, enterprise accounts, because they want to sell applications. Where IBM has an advantage over Oracle, they don't get social like Microsoft. In fact, I heard a story the other day that this primary means of communicating at work is still with email. There's no kind of social connections type of application internally that they're using. So they don't get social, and it's evident in their products. They don't have a lot of external sites that they can reference. Analytics is where they have a big hole, and I think the next acquisition is going to come around a company that is doing analytics, if I was a gambling man. And they don't really have good industry solutions. And same thing with reporting and monitoring. They have individual products that do not integrate well, and their strategy is very confusing. So, John.
So, I love these guys, all right? And at times they worried me because I figured, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble. So, rewind the clock about 8, 9, 10 years ago now. And Keiko mentioned this, all right? If you look at Oracle's spreadsheet, where do they primarily make their money? They make it on applications and on database. That stuff in the middle is a necessary evil. So when they went through all of these different acquisitions of buying all the different application vendors, one of the first things, the problem that they ran into is different application, different user experience. Different application, different user experience. At that time, they had one product. It was called Oracle Portal. It was based on the Oracle application server, and it wasn't really doing well. They couldn't even give it away. So they came up with a new strategy called the Web Center Suite. And by this time, they already had PeopleSoft, they already had J.D. Edwards, they already had Siebel, and they realized that what they needed was a way to unify that user experience. But that required two things to happen. There needed to be some work done on the portal side, but then there also needed to be some SOA work done on the application side. And again, what has Oracle's track record been with some of those applications? It really hasn't been progressing as fast as it could. Do they keep acquiring companies? Of course they do. Do they then go through the due diligence of SOA-ifying those applications? Not entirely. But Web Center Suite was, in theory, right, that model that was supposed to allow me to do some of that on the front end. So about 6 years ago, what do? They acquire BEA. Technically, a brilliant move, right? Because BEA actually had better core technologies. They replaced the Oracle application server with the WebLogic application server, and then they kind of picked and chose some of the different products from the BEA portfolio. When they did that, I was very concerned. My biggest competitor to WebSphere Portal back then was BEA. BEA WebLogic, because what BEA brought to the equation was two portals, Aqualogic, right, the former Plumtree, if I'm not mistaken, and WebLogic. WebLogic had about 4,000 customers. They were actually an excellent product. Had issues, right, because web content wasn't integrated. They were just a good, pure portal. So now they're in Oracle, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, I'm toast. Because we went from competing with the little company to one of the big boys. What did Oracle do? Boy, did they throw me a bone 6 months later. They said, you know, we're putting the WebLogic portal and the Aqualogic portal on the 7-year drop-dead plan. really? And their going forward strategy is Web Center Suite. I'm like, really? Okay. But think about it for a second. What's the key moneymaker there? It's the applications. The applications are what matter. The middleware stuff was stuff, right? And it's interesting. So like Keiko mentioned, confusion. Sales says one thing, they say something else to Forrester and to Gartner, and then the actual technical folks will tell you something different. So again, when Oracle says, I've got a great solution for you, the first question to ask, which portal framework is it based on? Is it based on Aqualogic, WebLogic, Web Center Suite, or the old Sun portal? Right? And then it begs the question, which one finally falls out of favor over time? Because they can't, think about it. You can't support 4 different portal streams as a development projects. So that's where some of their issues come in. Now again, from an applications perspective, right, you want to use Web Center Suite, well, they would encourage you to use Web Center Suite to work with their applications. Why? Because there is a little tie-in, and there's maybe even a couple of price advantages there. It's just like SAP. If you work with SAP, they're going to ask you to use NetWeaver because that's actually a very elegant way of interacting with their applications. But where we add value as WebSphere Portal is I'm kind of the Uber portal, or the federated portal, or the Switzerland of portals, for lack of a better term. Right? I can connect with each of these applications and interact with them much easier. Right? And that's the piece. That's where our added value is. Now again, if Oracle's in your account, right, they're going to try very, very hard to sell you Web Center Suite, the whole bucket. Right? The question then becomes, is it something you can deploy? Is it something you could leverage? Is it something you can take advantage of? And then how much effort is involved in doing so? So let's summarize. So the competitive landscape, we kind of had a chance to address a lot of different topics. Right? My big claim here is, look at some of these companies' core competencies. Where do they fit? All right, what are they good at? Where are they lightweight at? All right, from my technology, my portal, again, we're heavy duty, we're industrial, we're big. Again, it's a good heavy infrastructure, and it works because it gets to do a lot of different things. Now another question worth asking, but John, I'm a small to mid-sized company. I've got only like 150 employees. What portal do I use? Again, we also have a version of Portal. It's called Portal Express. It's the same exact footprint as this, but again, it's priced specifically to meet that type of small customer need. Need help? We've got this wonderful program called Portal Now. You can get a portal up and running in less than 4 weeks. Right? Whether it's web content specific or application specific. We even have one of our business partners, Stribo, even has a program called Mobile Now, which will take an application and quickly push it out through either a hybrid app model, a hybrid web model, or even a true app model. So again, you've got a couple of different options there. Right? But the bottom line is, if you are going to do a comparison, hold the vendors to the fire. That includes me. All right? Ask about what are the references, what have you done, where you can ask where the skeletons are buried. We'll never actually tell you, but you can still ask the question, right? Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? If you don't trust us, by all means, please go talk to Gartner, go talk to Forrester. There's also a company called the Real Story Group, which does a really good analysis of some of the portal and the web content technologies. So, if you need additional information, got a couple of websites. They actually now, with version 8 shipping, a lot of content got refreshed. There's some really cool new stuff out there to look at. Please make sure you take a look at the Fast Track offerings site, and you want good ideas on templates and portlets, go out to the solutions catalog as well. So, we finished early. That's a first. Anyway, thank you for your time. I know the after lunch session is usually a little bit of a challenge. I wish I could have bribed you with some spicier beverage, but I think that's coming tonight at the reception. So join me, I'm buying. But anyway, thank you again for your time and your attention.